You think you know Dark Star? You don't. John Carpenter and Dan O'Bannon made this movie for $60,000. The control panels? Ice cube trays lit from beneath. The spacesuit chest plate? A muffin tin. And the guy crawling around puppeteering a beach ball alien? He'd become Michael Myers 4 years later. But here's the one that floors me.
Is a documentary about what's going on now. That's an absolute lie.
Ray Bradbury tracked down one of the actors decades after the film came out and confronted him for stealing his story. Today, we're exposing 15 hidden truths behind Dark Star, including a secret insult hidden in the film and how a beach ball became the inspiration for one of cinema's most terrifying creatures. Let's get into it. 1. It started as a 45-minute student film. Dark Star wasn't supposed to exist. In 1970, John Carpenter and Dan O'Bannon got $1,000 from USC's film school to make their thesis project. That's it. Just enough to prove they could make films so they could graduate and get real jobs. They shot on 16mm with fellow students as cast and crew. And here's where it gets painful. Production dragged on for 2 years because they kept running out of money. Shoot a scene. Stop. Raise funds. Shoot another scene months later. By early 1972, they finally finished a 45-minute cut. Total budget? $6,000. Nobody expected it would ever become a real movie. They were wrong. 2. The control panels were literally ice cube trays. This is my favorite piece of low-budget wizardry in film history. Those impressive control panels with all the illuminated buttons, ice cube trays, flipped upside down, lit from beneath. Quentin Tarantino later said they were so well disguised you'd never notice unless someone pointed them out. He's right. But it doesn't stop there. Talby's spacesuit chest plate was a muffin tin. His backpack? Styrofoam packing material, probably from a television set. The helmets weren't real equipment. They were children's toys from Ideal's STAR team line, sized for kids. You can see how poorly they fit in every single scene. Carpenter and O'Bannon made it work anyway. When you have no money, you get creative, or you don't make movies. 3. Nick Castle played the beach ball. Alien, let's talk about that alien. It's a painted beach ball with rubber claw feet glued to the bottom. That's not an exaggeration. That's literally what it is. The guy crawling around on the floor puppeteering it? Nick Castle, a USC film student helping out on the production. He gave that beach ball personality just by tapping it against the floor at different rhythms. Here's the wild part. 4 years later, Castle would play Michael Myers in Carpenter's Halloween. $25 a day to create one of horror's most iconic killers. And that beach ball sequence? It wasn't even in the original student film. They added it in 1973 when they got more money to expand to feature length. It became the most memorable part of the entire movie. But wait until you hear what Dan O'Bannon did with it. 4. Dan O'Bannon turned the alien into his script for Alien. This is where Dark Star changes cinema history. After the film, O'Bannon worked briefly on Alejandro Jodorowsky's failed Dune adaptation in Paris. That's where he met H.R. Giger. When Dune collapsed, O'Bannon moved back to LA and crashed on his friend Ronald Schusett's couch with nothing to do. He started thinking about that beach ball. The problem was obvious. With their tiny budget, the alien was clearly just a beach ball. It could only work as comedy. But O'Bannon realized something. With a real budget, the premise of an alien creature stalking a spaceship crew could work as genuine horror. He called his new script Star Beast. 5 years after Dark Star, it became Alien. A painted beach ball became the xenomorph. That's the butterfly effect of filmmaking. 5. They shot scenes. Whenever they could scrape together money, most movies shoot everything in one production block. Dark Star wasn't most movies. Carpenter described it this way. It wasn't you shoot the whole movie in one section in one block of time. It was shoot a scene, raise money, shoot a scene months later, raise money. Production stretched from 1970 to 1974. 4 years. After finishing the first version in early 1972, they ran out of money completely. Then, director Jonathan Kaplan gave them $10,000 to expand to feature length. That paid for 50 additional minutes of footage shot in 1973. But here's the continuity nightmare. By 1973, 2 of the actors had cut their long hair. They had to wear wigs to match footage shot years earlier. Filmmaking held together with duct tape and determination. 6. The original title was The Electric Dutchman. Before it was Dark Star, Carpenter and O'Bannon called their script The Electric Dutchman, then Planetfall, then finally Dark Star. At the Filmex premiere in 1974, Carpenter described it as waiting for Godot in outer space. That description matters. Before Dark Star, movie astronauts were always spit and polish, highly disciplined professionals working in perfect harmony. NASA promoted that image constantly. Dark Star introduced something revolutionary. Space travel could be boring as hell. Crews stuck together for years would get sick of each other. They'd bicker. They'd go a little crazy. It was the anti-2001, and it changed how we think about astronauts in fiction forever. 7. Ray Bradbury confronted an actor. Decades later. This story is uncomfortable, and it's completely true. The ending of Dark Star was lifted almost entirely from Ray Bradbury's short story Kaleidoscope from The Illustrated Man, published in 1951. Crew members of an exploding spacecraft tumble through space, forced to confront their mortality. One becomes absorbed into a meteor cluster, another becomes a shooting star. O'Bannon admitted it years later. The ending was copied from Ray Bradbury's story Kaleidoscope. Decades after the film came out, Bradbury had a chance encounter with actor Brian Norell, who played Lieutenant Doolittle. When Bradbury learned Norell had appeared in Dark Star, he berated the actor for being part of the story theft. Norell had nothing to do with writing the script. He was just a USC film student who acted in it. Bradbury didn't care. 8. George Lucas hired O'Bannon. Because of Dark Star, those flashing computer graphics on the monitors throughout the ship, Dan O'Bannon created all of them. George Lucas saw Dark Star and was impressed. The animations were remarkably sophisticated for a student film, effective enough to prove O'Bannon could deliver professional results with almost no money. Lucas hired O'Bannon to create similar computer animation sequences for Star Wars. Think about that. Dark Star, made for $60,000, directly launched O'Bannon's Hollywood career. And that career gave us Alien, Total Recall, and the visual effects work on one of the biggest films ever made. Sometimes the student film actually matters. 9. Carpenter hid an insult to the producer. In the film. This one's petty. I love it. Producer Jack H. Harris bought the theatrical distribution rights and paid for additional footage, but Harris annoyed Carpenter during production, insisting on changes, cutting material Carpenter liked. So Carpenter got revenge. At one point in the film, a computer screen flashes, "Fuck you, Harris," for just a frame or two. It goes by so fast most people never notice it. But it's there. Harris either never found it or couldn't do anything about it by the time he did. That hidden middle finger has become one of Dark Star's most famous behind-the-scenes secrets. Never anger your director. 10. The entire budget was $60,000. Let's put this in perspective. Dark Star's final budget after 4 years of production was approximately $60,000. That's about $400,000 in today's money. Still a pittance, even for an independent film. The original student short cost just $6,000. Most of that $60,000 went into the 1973 reshoots that expanded to feature length. The cast were all film students working for free or next to nothing. Sets were built from whatever they could scrounge from USC's film school or buy at discount stores. Every dollar shows on screen. And somehow, Carpenter and O'Bannon squeezed amazing value from their limited resources. You don't need money. You need creativity and stubbornness. 11. It bombed. Initially, but became a cult classic. Dark Star's theatrical run was a disaster. When it premiered at Filmex in March 1974, Carpenter got his first bad review from Variety, a limp parody of Stanley Kubrick's 2001, a space odyssey that warrants attention only for some remarkably believable special effects achieved with very little money. When Bryanston Pictures released it to 50 theaters in January 1975, it made almost no money. But here's where it gets interesting. The film kept playing until 1980, mostly at midnight screenings and on college campuses. It found its audience slowly. Then Alien and Halloween became massive hits in 1979. Atlantic Releasing re-released Dark Star with a new tagline, from the author of Alien and the director of Halloween, the ultimate cosmic comedy. That's when it finally found commercial success. Sometimes you just have to wait for the world to catch up. 12. Carpenter dubbed his own voice over another actor. Dre Pahich played Talby, the crew member who spends all his time in the observation dome watching the stars. One problem, Pahich had a thick accent that didn't work for the character, so Carpenter dubbed his own voice over all of Pahich's dialogue in post-production. You're watching Pahich's performance on screen. You're hearing Carpenter's voice coming out of his mouth. This was just one of many compromises with their limited resources and non-professional cast. Pahich was a film student who happened to be available, not a trained actor. And when they needed to shoot additional footage in 1973, his hair was much shorter, so he wore a wig to match the 1971 footage. Low-budget filmmaking is 90% problem-solving. 13. John Landis got the film its distribution deal. After Carpenter and O'Bannon expanded Dark Star to feature length, they needed a distributor. Without one, the film dies. That's where John Landis came in. Landis was friends with O'Bannon. He showed the completed film to producer Jack H. Harris, who had made The Blob in 1958 and knew how to market low-budget genre films. Harris bought the theatrical distribution rights and sold the film to Bryanston Pictures. Without Landis making that connection, Dark Star might never have reached theaters. It could have remained an obscure student film that maybe a handful of people ever saw. Landis himself would go on to direct Animal House and An American Werewolf in London. Everyone in this story went somewhere. 14. O'Bannon later re-edited it into a 72-minute cut. In 1992, Dan O'Bannon created his own director's cut of Dark Star on Laserdisc. He cut the film down to 72 minutes, removing much of the footage added for theatrical release. O'Bannon felt Harris and the distributors had padded out the film with unnecessary material that killed the pacing. He wanted to get back closer to the original student film spirit. This cut is controversial among fans. Some prefer the leaner, faster version O'Bannon assembled. Others like the longer 83-minute theatrical version with all its additional scenes, including the entire beach ball alien sequence that inspired Alien. Multiple versions of Dark Star exist. Fans still debate which one is definitive. There might not be an answer. 15. The elevator scene was shot on a floor with a camera dolly. This is pure filmmaking magic with zero budget. That tense sequence where Pinback is trapped in an elevator shaft, dangling above what looks like a terrifying drop, the actor was lying flat on the floor. The bottom of the elevator was actually rolling along the ground using a Moviola camera dolly from USC's old cinema building, which had once been a horse stable. If you look carefully at the underside of the elevator, you can actually see the steering end of the dolly. Carpenter shot at clever angles with dramatic lighting to make it look like Pinback was suspended high above a shaft. The entire sequence that feels claustrophobic and dangerous. An actor lying on his stomach on concrete while a beach ball with claws bounced around him. That's filmmaking. That's what you can do when you understand your craft but don't have a dime. So which detail about Dark Star shocked you the most? The ice cube tray control panels Ray Bradbury confronting the wrong guy? Or that this $60,000 student film launched both Halloween and Alien? Drop your answer in the comments. Subscribe and hit that bell. We've got more classic sci-fi secrets coming. See you in the next one.